The September air was sweet with the perfume of late-blooming roses, and except for the sound of my neighbor Julia repeatedly opening and closing her door, all was quiet. Though I'd learned to like Julia in the 4 months I'd lived in Juniper Grove, she struck me as an easily irritated woman, and something was irritating her on this beautiful morning. Never mind. The sun was breaking through the pines across the street, warming my face as I stood on my front porch. I was determined to take a walk before the day became too hot, and my enthusiasm for exercise flagged. Now Julia was mumbling, something about having had it with people. For an instant, I considered heading inside and shooting for my back door. There was a lovely walking trail behind my house. But curiosity got the best of me. "Something wrong, Julia?" I said, standing on tiptoe to peer over the privet hedge between our two houses. "Rachel, I'm glad you're up." She waved a newspaper with one hand and clutched at her robe with the other. "I need to talk to you." She disappeared from view, reappearing seconds later on the sidewalk, thumping toward my front door. "Coffee?" I asked as we headed inside. "You don't look like you've had a chance to make any." I know. She glanced down at her robe, scowling. "I realize I'm not dressed, but I need to talk to you before anyone else does." "That sounds ominous. Have a seat." She tossed the newspaper onto my kitchen table and sat. "You think you know people. You live in the same place for decades, and you think you know them, but you're wrong." She was fidgeting now, combing her fingers through her short, pillow-ruffled gray hair. I started the coffee, and while it was brewing, I joined her. "Something's really troubling you." Julia gestured at the paper, touched it, drew back her hand, then took a firm hold of it. "I want you to hear my side of the story, because it's not coming out with that woman in charge." "What woman?" "The editor-in-chief of this rag, Gillian Newsome." "I don't get the paper," I said, taking it from Julia's hand and setting it on the table before me. "Very wise." "What am I looking at?" "She put it above the fold to make it extra hard to miss, and there's a sidebar below it on the history of the case." Julia reached over and unfolded the newspaper, pressing it flat. Immediately, the name Foster caught my eye, Julia's last name. "George Foster officially declared dead," I read aloud. Puzzled, I looked to Julia. "But I thought your husband was dead. Didn't you say he died years ago?" 7 years and 5 days ago, but they never found his body, so the courts only ruled him dead 3 days ago. I had to go to court to have them state the obvious." "I had no idea." "That's because I don't talk about it, Rachel. Finish reading." She rose and headed for the coffee pot. "Pour me a cup, will you?" I went back to the paper. George Foster disappeared after stealing $300,000 from his bank, the article reminded everyone. I suppressed an urge to gasp. The bank's vice president and Foster's partner in crime, Mitch Dillard, disappeared at the same time, though Dillard's body was found in the Blue River the next day. Foster's body was never found. "Here you go. Black?" "That's fine." I took the cup and tried not to stare gobsmacked at my neighbor. I knew she was a widow. Everyone in our town of 1,200 souls knew that. She had lived in Juniper Grove her entire adult life. "How hard for you." "Yes, it was," she said simply. "Did you finish reading?" "Not yet." I took a long sip of coffee, hoping she would fill me in. I didn't even want the Juniper Grove Post in my house. I'd sworn off newspapers. "Well, I'll tell you," she said, dragging the paper her way. "George stole that money. I know that. And then he deserted me. But he died trying to get away. He and Mitch in the river that same day. He drowned, and the police and the search and rescue team that looked for them and found the destroyed raft both testified to that. Body or no body, there was no way George made it out alive."